This podcast is not intended to provide any investment advice. The opinions expressed here by either the hosts or guests do not necessarily reflect the views of PSA, Collectors Holdings, or any of their affiliates. Any discussion of collectible values in the past or present is not a guarantee of future performance.
Hello and welcome back to another week of the PSA Pod. We got a full house today. Ryan Green, Jack Archer, Steve Sloan, and Chris McGill from Card Ladder. We've got so much to talk about because last week was unique. You had, as everyone knows, the sports equinox, where you have MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA all going on at once. Big games.
So glorious. Just the best time of year. From a card perspective, we are in our high summer. We'll just call it that.
I love it. My wife hates it.
Same.
Why is there always sports on TV? I got the exact question the other night. Just because I'm living the dream, baby.
Haven't you watched enough football? And then
professional obligations. Come on.
You get the haven't you watched enough football? And then you remind them, actually, my team plays Monday night still. So there's it was never ending this weekend, but that's perfect because we're going to jump right in this week and talk stock up, stock down. This is one of our favorite things to do on this show. And this is really, with everything going on in sports, this is really now looking at the collectability and hobby sentiment around some big names, because with all of this stuff going on, there's guys who are surging and there's guys who are maybe struggling a little bit in the eyes of the collector. So Jack, let's start with the good, right? Stock up.
Bryce Harper. He had that incredible home run, take the Phillies to the World Series. The craziest thing for me about Bryce Harper is if you look at his 2012 Topps flagship PSA 10 rookie card, it's up pretty big right now. It sells around $120. You compare that to Mike Trout's 2011 update PSA 10 flagship rookie card, about $2,000. I understand why Trout should be more than Bryce Harper's, but that much more crazy to me.
And he had his legacy moment. Like that's the big thing. Like you look back on a guy's career and you say, like, what's the signature moment? I mean, that home run in the bottom of the 8th inning in Game 5 of the NLCS, that's like his legacy moment now. He has it.
Absolutely has it. It was one of those moments where I was rooting for the Padres, but I knew in the back of my mind there was no way that Suarez was going to beat him in that at bat. He was so locked in, and it was storybook from there. What I would say is I hope he can top it in the World Series, because NLCS is one thing, World Series is a whole nother level.
Does it add anything from a hobby perspective if he does it not only in the World Series, but against the Astros, who are now, based on everything that happened in 2017, it feels like anybody in an Astros uniform has been so hobby tainted.
Yeah, the Astros are the Death Star right now. So I think everybody outside of Houston is rooting for the Phillies. And I think people that might have been cold on Bryce Harper previously because he was like cocky or his attitude or whatever it might be, are going to warm up to him in a big way this World Series.
Can I just share a little nugget that I found on Reddit? This segment is stock up, right? But there's a really interesting thread on Reddit about the fact that anytime the Phillies win the World Series, the overall stock market is down. The economy is in a crisis. I am so okay with that because I would rather have the economy crash than have the Houston Astros win another World Series. I'll say 1929, Philadelphia Athletics won the World Series. Obviously, financial crisis. 1980, Phillies won the World Series. Financial crisis. 2008, Phillies won the World Series. Financial crisis. 2022, let's go economy. Go all the way to the bottom. Go Phillies in the World Series. That's what I got to say.
Chris, you said last week too, you're like, even before the NLCS heroics, you're seeing like on your guys' end on Card Ladder, a lot of heat around Bryce Harper cards.
Yes. So also definitely rooting for financial collapse so that baseball can get the correct outcome. Two numbers to throw at you guys. The first one is 77%. That's the amount that Bryce Harper's Card Ladder index has increased over the last year,
wow,
which is pretty impressive. The other number is 47%, which is how much Bryce Harper's index has increased all time, which means Harper has been digging himself out of a hole that he's been in since the release of his cards going back to 2012. And this year, he's made up ground that he had been slowly bleeding over the course of his career, which is kind of interesting given that he's a 7-time All-Star. He's a 2-time NL MVP. ESPN put out a list earlier this year that had him ranked as the 94th best baseball player of all time. But this definitely has quietly been the year of the Bryce Harper recovery. But given the fact that all time his index is only up 47%, that's part of the story of how Mike Trout prices are just, diminishing, crushing Bryce Harper prices. I think that there's something out of whack. And if Bryce Harper sees a magical World Series, we might see some pretty big changes between those two players.
So the stock might not be done going up.
Probably not.
Wow.
But it depends. I agree with Steve. Let's see. It needs to happen in the World Series too. The LCS isn't enough.
Yep. Well, this next one for stock up, this is a little sentimental for us because we go back to the beginning of the PSA pod back in February. It felt like the first 3-4 weeks of the show, all we were talking about was Joe Burrow because he was everything at the time in the market. And now, after a little bit of a dip to start the football season, I feel like we can safely say after this past weekend, Burrow is back.
After week 1, people were calling him swaggy Andy Dalton. The hobby was worried. But he put on a show on Sunday, and he looks really good. The connection between him and Jamar Chase is very real. I don't own any Joe Burrow cards, but I really want some Joe Burrow cards. He is the real deal. He's so fun. Great for the hobby. Great for the sport. I'm in.
Yeah, to mix my metaphors and to steal a quote from another quarterback, I'm going to say RELAX to the hobby on Mr. Burrow. He has not only the talent, but he has one amazing compliment in Jamar Chase. And if you look at the tape, Jamar Chase made a couple of those touchdowns on his own.
Oh, yeah.
So that is just such a nice piece of insurance for Joe Burrow going forward. So just everyone relax. We got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even Boyd is no slouch. I think the Bengals are definitely to be reckoned with, at least for the rest of this year. Everyone's fine.
This is like reminding me of Patrick Mahomes early on, where it's like, maybe when things calm down, I should get some of his cards. And then I didn't. And then the next time, maybe I should get some of his cards. And then I didn't. And you keep wondering when you're going to run out of chances.
Window. Yeah. Did
we miss our window with the last 6 weeks with Joe Burrow? Because now, the man is back.
You missed it. Yeah.
Well, then we're going to go to the hardwood. Jack, Chris, this is where you guys really dive in. Who's up this week?
It's got to be Ja Morant. Chris's Mavericks shut him down. They always shut down the Grizzlies, it feels like. But he's played incredibly to start the season. He's just so much fun to watch. I had a friend text me, very, very passionate basketball card collector, has an incredible personal collection, really cool Kobe stuff, really cool LeBron stuff, and then really cool Luka stuff. He said, if you could guarantee no injury risk for Ja Morant, I would sell everything and go all in on Ja Morant. I thought that was pretty interesting. Stock up for Ja Morant.
Yeah, to follow up on that, we have to say Morant is the MVP favorite right now, or top 2. He's 3rd in player efficiency rating, 4th in box plus minus, averaging 35, 7, and 4 on 55, 60, 86 splits, and he leads the league in scoring. If he were to maintain that production, he absolutely will be a runaway MVP. Of course, maintaining that type of production is incredibly difficult to do. The Grizzlies worry me a little bit. As Jack alluded to, I did have an in-person view of them losing to the Mavericks by 41. Granted, they were on the second night of a back-to-back, and they were playing without Dylan Brooks. Once they get Jaren Jackson Jr. back, they will be better, much better, I think, considering Jackson led the league in blocks last year, and defense is something where they're really lacking right now. They gave up 122 points to the Rockets, even though they ended up beating them. So I think this team will get better. I think if they can just tread water and Morant can continue to have this level of production, there's precedent from the last few seasons that you don't have to be a number 1 or a number 2 seed to produce an MVP. Morant has just exceeded expectations yet again somehow this year.
Shout out Desmond Bane too. I think he's going to make a really big leap. There's a lot of potential with him. Two other guys off to a fast start that usually have a slow start. Luka, who feels like he's in pretty good shape right now to start the season, and Jason Tatum, who typically starts slow and kind of heats up the back half of the season. Both of those guys are in kill mode right now.
Yeah, but both of those guys are going to need their teams to win games. We know they're phenomenal individual talents. Boston is off to a much better start this year than last year. They're 3-1 right now, notwithstanding a disappointing loss to the Bulls. Last year they started 10-10 and still made it to the finals, so they have to be feeling good about themselves. Dallas is 1-1, but they have the best net rating in the league. They also have the best offensive rating in the league. And if the season were to end today, they would have the best offensive rating of all time. So I'm cautiously optimistic about both of those teams, but still a small sample size.
Be a really short season.
2-game season for the men.
Well, one team that's really probably thinking they're lucky stars, and it's not a short season. Let's start stock down, staying on the hardwood. I mean, we call him King James, but if you're a collector of LeBron, how are you feeling right now?
Things are looking bleak for the Lakers right now. My heart goes out to all hardcore Lakers fans. The Lakers fans I know in my life are some of the most passionate basketball fans I know. So respect to them. I'm sorry. Hopefully LeBron James just chases stats this year, but I am so stressed out about that team. So stressed out about the Westbrook situation. I don't own any LeBron James cards personally, mostly because the prices are just out of this world right now. But I mean, there's a chance that like the Lakers are so bad and things get so lackluster that some of these things become a little more approachable in price, which I'm excited about.
Great point. You look at guys like Brady, who's having a bad kind of end to his career. I wonder if LeBron is so athletically talented, if he teeters out or if he can finish strong just on a personal level, and if that would affect his card prices. It's an open question, but it is a buying opportunity if nothing else. And I think if you're serious about trying to get into LeBron, watch closely over the next season, because the Lakers do not look like they have any team depth, and LeBron is going to be a one-man show.
Yeah, I was going to go to the Tom Brady comparison too. Both of these guys are disappointing so far. There's more time for LA Lakers to right the ship, and they can. I mean, they have the second best defensive rating in the league. Defense is not the problem. Offenses, they're the only team with an offensive rating under 100 points per 100 possessions. They have 97. So their offense is terrible, but we don't need numbers to tell us that. Brady is 3-4. He's lost back-to-back games to the Steelers and to the Panthers, arguably two of the worst teams in the NFL. But still, somehow, the sports gods look favorably upon Tom Brady, because he's still in the division lead, or tied for the division lead, and is still somehow a threat for the playoffs. I think something similar can happen to the Lakers. I think they can hang around and make things interesting, but the Westbrook combination is just not working, and I'd look for them to make a move. But if they do, like I said, their defense is playing really well. If they can add a little bit of offense and get rid of the chemistry issue, they might be, a fringe playoff team.
They need spacing. They need shooting. To quote LeBron James, we don't exactly have many lasers on this team.
Good point there, made by general manager LeBron. So, you said Brady has a chance to recover. In terms of stock down, we're going to look at a couple other young quarterbacks, who have very iffy outlooks the rest of the way this season. Let's start with some recency. Let's start with Mac Jones, because Monday night, if you're a collector of Mac Jones, you're probably feeling pretty down right now. And as a collector of a fellow young quarterback, I've been there when the downs are there, when the downs are hitting, but I don't know if I've seen anything that down. It was getting benched after 3 possessions in his first game back.
I'm surprised you didn't go in harder or more aggressive with the Justin Fields pumping.
I saved that for off the mic. Yeah,
I'm just shocked you came into work today after such a resounding victory for your boys. So no, I kid. We talk a lot about the 2021 rookie quarterback class and kind of ranking those guys. And no surprise that we continue to shuffle the deck a little bit, and there's shuffle the order in terms of where these guys rank. Like, my hot take on this one is Mac Jones is now at the bottom, like even below Trey Lance. Trey Lance at least has a career arc upside. He has nobody in his way in San Francisco, unlike Billy Zappi and the New England Patriots. So, where the guys in the middle land, that's up for debate. But in terms of the bottom, it's Mac and only Mac.
So this is what Belichick does. Mac Jones threw this lollipop pass. It got intercepted, and he benched him. He gave him the same treatment he gives every running back that's ever been in his offense. Yeah. I'm not too worried about it. It's probably a buying opportunity if you're a hardcore Mac Jones believer or a Patriots fan. This is simply Bill Belichick being Bill Belichick. He'll be back. He'll be fine. He's got great footwork. He's got good accuracy. There are some things to like about Mac Jones. He doesn't have the profile of someone that I would want to collect personally, but I totally get it if you do. Yeah. Not stressed about this. Mac Jones will be back. Buying opportunity, in my personal opinion.
Can I ask you guys a question as it relates to this? Is very applicable to fantasy football, where you want nothing to do with the Patriots running backs because of the committee and the way that Belichick handles that backfield. Is there any parallel or through line here to collecting and having a Mac Jones collection, having to deal with Belichick and that constant threat of him being so, just fickle with his decisions on who to start?
I mean, he's still young. If the Mac Jones collection matures in the way that the collectors are hoping for, Belichick wouldn't do something like this. This is just a way to kind of to flex a little bit and do his Bill Belichick-y things.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. Bill Belichick, if I'm correct, unless I'm mistaken, that's the first quarterback he's ever drafted in the first round. So there clearly was belief there. And he delivered in his rookie year. He threw 22 touchdown passes. He went to the Pro Bowl. He led him to the playoffs. I'm not ready to really punt and say that Belichick's totally turned the tide. And, a first round quarterback who played for one of Belichick's proteges in college, Nick Saban. So I think I'm trying not to see this as, if this is rock bottom, it's not that bad of a rock bottom. I think he'll probably be starting again next week. And, the ankle gets healthy. I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah. The Bears are a juggernaut. There's a great offense. There's no shame in losing to the Bears.
You do not push around the Chicago Bears on primetime. If there's anything recent history has told us, right, Chris? Come on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Bears, we're still riding high on the 86 title, but that's going to carry us for another 20 years.
Basically, I actually said to my dad while watching the game, I said that might be the first time the Bears have beaten the Patriots since Super Bowl 20. I literally don't know. I don't think I can never remember. I can't recall seeing it. So a higher profile young quarterback who stock is a little down here, but how are we feeling? I'm going to ask you, Jack, because you are a PC. This is a PC of yours, Justin Herbert. They're 4-3. They're dealing with a ton of injuries, including his. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster through 7 weeks. How you feeling?
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I'm looking at my Justin Herbert PC right now, thinking I'm looking at Carson Wentz cards.
Oh,
it hurts. It really does. He's dinking and dunking like primetime Alex Smith, the guy with the best arm in football. It is absolutely brutal. The coaching staff, he's clearly hurt. All I want is full, healthy Justin Herbert unleashed. And it's probably going to be a few more weeks until that happens. I will tell you this, the bye week came at a perfect time. I'm holding tight to my Justin Herbert collection. I believe in him as a talent. And I'm excited for things to turn around. But right now, this very moment, losing to Geno Smith and the Seahawks, playing as he did, making the mistakes that he did, and just the offense as a whole just sort of looking so lackluster, it's a tough time to be a Justin Herbert collector.
Can I pounce as the resident Raiders fan? Can I pounce on this?
Have at it.
The Chargers are just the most inept franchise on earth from the standpoint of medical personnel, putting Justin Herbert back out there on the field when he's clearly hurt. Like, what are you doing? This is like reeks of Tyrod Taylor all over again in like a punctured lung. Like, I'm sorry. This is like malfeasance in terms of like dealing with this guy's health as your cornerstone of your franchise. Not only that, all the other injuries around the Chargers, the outlook is bleak. I'm sorry, because he's still on his rookie deal. What happens when they have to pay the man? They're not going to have money for anyone else. Like, this is a problem. I'm sorry.
He's trampling on all your hopes that are remaining.
I'm just trying to buy up as much Justin Herbert because I believe in the guy's talent. I believe in the guy's talent for sure. He's ungodly, but
there it is.
I just have real concerns about the organization.
All right, that hurts me 0% because I look at you and I just see Derek Carr. I'm good.
Hey, I've come to peace with my Derek Carr collection. All right, so I have nothing but numbness on every Sunday.
I think the synopsis here is the stock's down a little bit on Herbert, but you got to be feeling better about having Herbert cards than Mac Jones right now.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
it's-
much.
yeah.
Probably always and forever. I'll feel that way. But the pressing hasn't really slipped on Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
I might be mistaken, Chris, but everything I've seen from the stuff I'm watching and tracking pretty closely, it's all stayed relatively stable, maybe down a little bit, like 5% or something like that. So on top of all this pain, there's not even like this incredible buying opportunity for me to get into a card that I've been eyeing. So yeah, a lot of suffering over here.
Yeah, well, Herbert has a lot of believers in this hobby, and they're going to hold on for a little bit longer, I would suspect. Plus, with the injury, being the mitigating circumstance here, and the team still being 4-3, there's still some reasons for optimism for a little bit later in the year. But his index is down 16% over the last month, which is significant. But it also basically tracks what the greater football index has been doing. So it sucks to be holding cards that have lost maybe 16% of their value on average, but you're not really doing any better or worse than football cards on the whole.
Yeah. So don't panic yet. But if you want to sell those Herberts, you know where to find me.
So that was stock up, stock down. if you enjoyed that segment, you should drop a review on iTunes. We'd appreciate that.
Yeah, and there's going to be plenty more of that coming. But in the middle of that segment, you guys dropped a couple terms. I heard injury risk, position. I heard us talking about the career arc, which is a good segue because we're going to get into the core score discussion. We teased it last week, so we're going to take a quick break here. Dive into the core score. You're not going to want to miss this.
It's special to have cards like that to be able to look back and show my son back home, and he's gonna be pumped. So,
yep, that's Mike Trout you just heard. In case you hadn't heard, the 3-time American League MVP is officially all in on the hobby, and he recently even began creating his collection with PSA. He even now has a new PSA pedigree collection, the Trout Family Collection. This collection of Mike Trout cards features a wide range of pieces, from iconic cards to under-the-radar cards that maybe you haven't seen before. They're all from the span of his Hall of Fame career, all of which mean quite a bit to him personally as a collector. From first Bowman autos, to rookie cards, to one-of-ones, to cards he's even signed and inscribed after acquiring. The collection is truly stunning. So which card of Trout's was he talking about specifically just a minute ago? Head to PSA's YouTube channel to check out not only the unveil of Trout's pedigree collection, but also to see him share the stories behind some of his favorite Mike Trout cards that he now owns. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Go check it out. All right, we're back and we're ready to talk core score. We introduced this last week. Jack, let's give a recap. What is the core score and what goes into it? How are we scoring this?
COR stands for Collectability Over Replacement. It is our version of WAR, the popular baseball stat that they use to compare players across eras accurately. This is our way to sort of compare players across eras, but also just like their general collectability and why someone like Zion or John Morant might be more collectible than someone like a Bradley Beal, for instance, or a Jimmy Butler. It goes into a lot of different factors, everything from cool factor to career arc to injury risk. And we've been running a few names through the algorithm, through the system, and we've spit out some data. And today we're going through hobby favorite, the juggernaut himself, Zion Williamson. The whole crew is here. We're gonna basically give Zion a score 1 to 10 for these different factors. And then they're all weighted differently. And then we're going to come up with a core score for Zion. For comparison's sakes, I'm going to share 2 other core scores. John Morant came in at a 9. Kobe Bryant came in at a 14.89. Our impression is that Kobe will be one of the highest core score athletes in the entire hobby universe.
And just a reminder, let's give everybody what's going into this and what's kind of getting the weight.
Yeah, so there's I think 10 or 11 different categories. 11 different categories. The highest weighted categories are going to be winning, market, highlight appeal, fan loyalty, quality of cards. So does he have one-of-one logo man autos, or does he just have like a simple base card and that's kind of it? and position. So a center is going to be ranked much lower. Same with like a relief pitcher, catcher, something along those lines. A shortstop or shooting guard will be ranked much higher. And then on the other factors that are weighted a little bit less is injury risk, career arc, where they are in their career, reputation. Someone like a Kyrie Irving might have like a lower reputation than someone like a Steph Curry. Celebrity, just sort of like their overall cultural presence and connection to like various brand endorsements and, you know, celebrity friends and things like that. And then cool factor. Rudy Gobert perhaps might be a little bit lower. Someone like, you know, Devin Booker, Ja Morant might be a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm. And just a reminder, we go all the way from -10 to positive to +10.
Yeah, this is really trying to capture everything that goes through a collector's mind subconsciously as they make their decisions on who to collect and who not to collect. So we'd love to hear from the audience as well in terms of what you guys think should be included. We listed out 11 categories. Maybe there are a couple more. Winning, for example, is one we discussed a little bit. There's more to just winning. Maybe it's the statistics of the individual or milestone moments in their career. All this kind of can roll up into winning. So anyway, this is something we'll flesh out more and love to have a social discussion around it on our handles. But this is supposed to capture succinctly everything that goes into the psyche of collecting. So
you mentioned we're starting with Zion. Where do we want to get started here?
Let's start with market. I feel like that's a pretty easy one. Mm-hmm. New Orleans, not the sexiest market, one could say. There are new teams. They don't have like a really deep heritage or fan base. And a lot of people would say that the entire state cares more about college football and college basketball than they do NBA. Mm-hmm. So my initial reaction is that probably a pretty low score for market, potentially even negative.
Yeah, I put it as a 0 personally because I don't think it contributes at all to his marketplace, his marketability as a collectible athlete. When New Orleans catches fire, like we saw with the Saints in their Super Bowl run, they really get into it. And I think they're a lovable city. Outside of New Orleans, people don't have much negativity to say about it. So I wouldn't necessarily put it negative. I don't think people have a negative outlook on the city overall. And they're one of those easy to root for markets when you're not in it.
Yeah. And you know, when we were hashing this out, one of the perfect examples we said of this is like, does the market they play in add to their collectability? Like the Derek Jeter, right? We always talk about the Yankee premium, you know, what does Derek Jeter's collectability look like if he played his entire career in like Baltimore or in Tampa? So I kind of agree with the kind of right in the middle 0 here. Chris, what about you?
Yep. I'm going to go with 0 as well on this one. Definitely wouldn't go positive. There is maybe even a risk of a negative here just because for other reasons, I was looking at prices of New Orleans Pelicans tickets and they are dirt cheap. Just doesn't seem like there's a ton of fan loyalty for that team. But, you know, I'm good at 0.
I mean, just a year ago, everyone was talking about how in disarray that franchise was. I'm fine with 0 because everyone else is, but I think it might be maybe like a -2, -3 personally.
It's teetering.
Yeah.
Let's leave that as a 0. We'll revisit if we decide he's too high at some point, because you're right. I like the point about the tickets is spot on. That indicates that inside his own market, there's less eyeballs seeing him on a nightly basis, which is a factor. I mean, guys need to have crossover appeal and wider support within the marketplace to be collectible. So if you don't see that could obviously ding him a couple points.
Okay. What's next?
Let's do highlights.
Okay.
Is he the kind of player that's going to produce just like house of highlights, crazy, like videos you're going to want to watch 20 times in a row because they're just absolutely nuts? And I think the answer here is pretty clear.
So for reference, when we were doing Kobe, putting him through this, I believe we had him at an 8 for highlights. So what do we think? I mean, obviously Zion's very high, especially in the generation he plays in. I mean, a big reason behind his popularity is because of kind of the social media virality of what he did, not only in college, in the NBA, but even all the way back to high school. You remember what a phenomenon he was when he was 16. with the grainy highlight videos popping up on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, not only that, he has a couple highlight videos that have gone viral, including the one of the guy guarding him in high school who was just like the tiniest human on earth.
Like 5'2", 140, yeah.
Yeah, but was super excited about it. But I don't know, I scored him a little lower on highlights just because he hasn't had that many yet at a pro level. I remember his shoe breaking in college, and anytime he goes down, you as part of a highlight Sunday night, for example, like he hit the deck pretty hard. And that's a highlight as well, but not a positive one. So I gave him a 4 overall on my personal rating.
I'd go a little bit higher personally, maybe like a 6.
That's where I had him, about a 6.
I mean, he's so much fun to watch, and he has some pretty spectacular moments. I think if we get a full season out of Zion at the end of the year, if we look back at like how many views different NBA players got, I think he's going to be very close to the top, if not the top.
All right, so we'll lock him in as a 6.
Chris, you good with that?
Yeah, because you know what? I was going to go higher. So it's going to average us out to 6. And just real quick, the reason why, Zion is a spectacle. In my 30-ish years of watching basketball, I've never seen a player with that combination of size, strength, and speed all at once. And even over the weekend, as I was catching up on highlights like the Hornets game and some of the other games as well, Zion is the 3rd leading scorer on the team. And I don't think he's led the team in scoring once yet this season. He hasn't had the statistical output that would make him like the focal point if he was any other player. But because he's Zion and because he's so mesmerizing to look at, he still dominates Pelicans highlight packages, even when his teammates are putting up much better games than he is.
All right. So we're gonna lock in the 6 there. I feel like we landed on a nice spot. What's next for us?
Let's do winning, which he hasn't necessarily done a lot of.
Yeah, this is a pretty easy one.
I feel like we got to put it at 0. I don't think it's fair to put it at negative at this stage in his career. So I think 0, just sort of like a neutral, is the right way to go right now.
Yeah, they've been competitive when he's been on the floor and healthy too.
Yeah, we can always increase the score later in the year because the Pelicans are set up for what everyone seems to see after last year's postseason, another good run to the postseason. So again, this is dynamic. This changes over time, and there's definitely upside there.
All right, next.
Fan loyalty. So in comparison, Kobe Bryant is a 10. People down here in Southern California.
He's a god.
Yeah. Steph Curry up in the Bay Area, 10. No doubt about it. Someone, James Harden, perhaps, -10. So Zion's kind of, honestly, I think he's kind of like a 0 to me, potentially even negative. He's come out and said the right things recently, but there was a moment, not even a year ago, where people thought that he was going to not sign like the rookie extension and try to force his way to the New York Knicks and all this kind of stuff. So I think people in New Orleans are certainly worried about him jumping ship in some capacity.
Agreed. It's not good. There was real fear that Zion was going to even maybe force his way out, although ultimately those rumors subsided. Fan loyalty at best is a 0.
I'm good with it there.
Celebrity. So this is more than just like name recognition. This is the kind of endorsements that you do, how you sort of maneuver through celebrity culture. Are you being invited to like the right events? Are you hanging out with the right people, the right actors and musicians? Are brands dying to work with someone? So just a little bit beyond just like Peyton Manning being in a bunch of Papa John's commercials or Baker Mayfield being the face of Hulu for an exhausting season worth of commercials. I think it's definitely not 0.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely like maybe 2, 3, 4 in that range. The name recognition is very, very big. He's got a massive Nike deal. People know who he is, but he hasn't reached that next level just yet. But I do think there is room to grow.
I'll give him a quick 3. I agree. The Nike thing, for me, it's about the crossover to finding more people to collect his cards. And when you have a marketing engine like Nike behind you, commercials on national television, that helps. It's just not like over the top at this point.
Yeah, I think 3 feels really fair there. Where do we want to move from there?
Reputation. As a reminder, -10, Kyrie Irving, plus 10, Steph Curry. So this isn't necessarily about.
Jack really hates Kyrie Irving.
I just believe the earth is round.
Touche.
So with this, it's not necessarily about like his on-court performance or where we're projecting expectations to be met or anything like that. This is simply about like how people view him as a human being, because it is incredibly important when it comes to collecting. If you look at like, James Harden, for instance, despite his skill level, not a lot of people want to collect him because of some of his body language stuff, his attitude.
The hobby sentiment, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say his reputation's either 0, maybe like -1, -2, mostly because of just the way that he's like treated his body so far, the sort of like lackluster. He's had moments, especially last season too, where it looked like he was, gaining weight rapidly and not taking care of his body. He like wasn't like bonding with the team. There was like a little bit of drama with CJ McCollum, for instance, when he didn't like accept his phone call. A few things for concern, but nothing major. I'm at like -2, -3 for reputation.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I don't know. Does being a Dookie influence your reputation one way or the other?
I feel like it all factors in, right? I mean,
I think he's helping a little bit. I came across in my extensive research of the last 30 seconds that he has offered to cover the salaries of all those who work at the Smoothie King Center for the next 30 days. I mean, that was a couple of years ago when there were some issues locally, but like, let me try to find, again, 30 seconds of research really gets me. But he's done something, some efforts in his community to help. So 30 days isn't 30 years, but it's something.
So what do we want to settle in on there?
I'm at like -2. What about you guys?
I think that feels pretty fair.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
so
I think I put him at 0. I mean, Smoothie King, it was during COVID. He offered to cover for 30 days during early stages of COVID, which is, I mean, it shows that he has some self-awareness as to his standing in the community. So
I laugh every time I hear Smoothie King Stadium.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to stay in the low negative for Zion there. Let's move on. What's next?
Career arc. So rookies, young stars will score much higher than someone who's kind of like towards the end of their career and there's not necessarily a ton of upside. Someone like Chris Paul, he's maybe got, I don't know, 2 seasons left, 3 seasons left. Less interesting career arc than someone like Ant-Man, who's got, 15, 20 years in front of him. Not 20 years, 15 years or so. We had Ja Morant as an 8. I think Zion's probably right around there too. He's still so incredibly young. There's so much potential. The ceiling is so high. Definitely scores a lot of points there.
And he's on a good team early in his career. Makes a difference, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is the right score for him, around a 7 or 8. This is all about the hobby, right? This is what everyone cares about when it comes to prospecting. Where are they in their career? And when you look at a guy like Zion, that was a complete fuel to the mania that went into the run-up on his cards. And so it's all about the idea of what the player can become. And so we still have that promise, that hope of Zion. So this is where it needs to be, in my opinion.
So somewhere around, we're going to stick around an 8.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. 8 it is for career arc. We're getting there. What's next?
Next up is cards. So the quality of the cards. I think we can all agree that the modern lineup offers a lot that certain eras don't. Whether it's on-card autographs, whether that's rookie patch autos, one-of-ones, various parallel chases, and just like a aesthetic factor where there is something very impressive about the various cards that are offered now that maybe back in the day they didn't have available. So you use someone like King Griffey Jr., for example, doesn't have a wide array of rookie cards. They were produced at a very high rate. He would score pretty low here. And then someone in the modern era that has a lot of the cards that you want would score a lot higher. But there's also it's not just like, it's not exactly 1-to-1 because there's a lot of different factors in play. So for Zion and Ja, for example, they might lose a few points because of the population of base cards and the high population of Prism Silvers and
how many parallels.
Exactly. The over parallel generation and that kind of thing. Whereas someone like, I don't know, like Giannis, for instance, might score a little bit higher because of the population numbers being a little bit more coveted by collectors.
Yeah, and for reference, when we did Kobe here, he was a 10 because he really hit that sweet spot where it spanned, I guess you could say, hobby generations, right? He had all those iconic 90s cards, the precious metal gems, the first Logo Man cards, all the way through, just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he's got the 90s stuff.
Yeah,
he has the top stuff. He's got the Panini stuff. Like he checks every box in terms of the kind of cards that you'd want in your collection.
This may be the most controversial category. I look forward to what listeners have to say about it, what the hobby has to say about it. I think Jack's synopsis was spot on. I am going to dock a few points for the surplus of products and offerings that continued, ramping up in the late 2010s and continue to ramp up, honestly. But other than, the risk of overproduction and a surplus of cards, other than that, the offering from the NT Logo Man autograph, rookie 1-of-1, the Immaculate, the Flawless, the Prism Black 1-of-1, the optical vinyl 1-of-1, the offering is tremendous. It's really, about as good as I can imagine it getting. So I'm going to go with an 8 for cards.
7 or 8 for me. I would like to point out that I think photography should play a little bit of an impact here.
Like that.
Maybe sort of like swing tiebreakers in some cases. Panini reused the same image of Zion on a few different cards, for instance, and then his Prism photo that they chose, it's pretty intense. He's got the armpits out. It's very close up compared to some of the other ones. I personally don't like that photo as much as I like John Morant's photo. Or
it's very clearly a photo shoot too. For me, I like the in-game action much better.
Okay.
Yeah, but just something to consider with this category as well. I don't think it's a major thing, but I think it matters for sure.
People hated the optic Zion rookie photo where it looks like he's holding a seashell to his ear.
And his jersey's a little frumpy. Like it looks like it just came out of like one of those plastic, like he just ordered it off an e-commerce website and it's all wrinkled.
There's preference. Some people like the photo shoot stuff, the really stylized stuff. Some people like the action shots.
And I'm probably alone in this, I love the photo shoot stuff.
I do too.
Yeah, I'm more of an action guy.
Yeah.
I think of the classics like, obviously Jordan's 86 Fleer, Kobe in 96. Like there's something about the in-game action to me that's just more true to what trading cards originated as. So that's just my take, my old guy take on it too. I also wonder if you guys may be overvaluing or the ultra modern variety available. I think it intimidates a lot of vintage collectors or people new to the hobby that there's just so many varieties. There's blue, orange ice, mojo, fireworks, silver. Like, how do I keep track of all this stuff? So I would ding it down more towards the 7 versus 8 for that reason, just because I think it can be intimidating to new people to the hobby.
It's a lot like the art world, though. You have to kind of really know your stuff and be able to navigate the card world really efficiently and be well researched and be in the know. You can't just kind of buy anything. And I like that about it because it adds like additional scarcity on top of everything. Because if you kind of know what's what and know what's important in the hobby, the fact that it's not easy is, I don't know, at least to me is interesting. As marketing professionals, as content people, I think the stuff that we're building out over time is going to alleviate a lot of that because education is so important. And as it stands right now, there's not enough education out there, but it's being built. And over time, it's going to kind of snowball and you're going to have something where kind of knowing, the difference between like an optic green to 5 compared to a Prism retail green might be confusing or intimidating for some people, but those questions and that kind of stuff is going to be answered a lot more fluently and sufficiently in time.
I feel like the 7-8 range it feels pretty spot on for Zion, and by comparison, other players of the same. We talked about Ja in that range as well. So I'm going to say we settle on a 7 here. It's a very key category, and this is, like you said, this is probably going to be the most heated to discuss with anybody we bring into this.
The next category is pretty easy though. Injury risk. I mean, this has to be a deep negative.
Negative. Yeah.
What do we have for Ja?
We had Ja at -7.
Okay.
I think the injury concern going forward for Ja is higher than Zion's, but I think because Zion has had so many, he missed all of last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's missing the game tonight, the day with the recording, because he had some type of light ankle injury. It's pretty high. -7 is kind of where I'm at for it personally.
I'm with that. Chris?
I might say it's riskier than Ja. -7, -8. That's where I'd be at.
All right, let's stick at -7 for injury risk. Where are we heading to next?
Position. So like we mentioned earlier, like a shortstop in baseball, shooting guard in basketball, there is a premium on position. I think because Zion's a forward, it's definitely not a negative. It's certainly a positive. I think 5 kind of feels right to me. What about you, Chris?
Yep. Position, better than being a center, worse than being the Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan style shooting guard. So 5 seems about right.
He's a power forward, but he's an exciting power forward. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we got a 5 on position.
All right. You want to do the rundown all the way down?
I think we have one more. I think we skip cool factor.
Oh.
And cool factor is incredibly important. Joe Burrow, as we mentioned earlier, would probably score pretty darn high. Same as Jamar Chase. Low cool factor would be a good name for low cool factor. I feel like I've been the only one who's harsh on the podcast today. So
are we talking? Let's go in the NBA. Who's low on the cool factor? Like, is a
Rudy Gobert?
Rudy Gobert, Chris Middleton.
Where does Bill Belichick score on the cool factor?
I score him higher than most. I'll be totally honest about it, but because he's so uniquely odd.
Pat Beverly, low cool factor. People aren't like, yeah, Pat Beverly, that guy's cool.
So what do you score Zion?
Gosh. Not negative, he kind of floats around 0 for me personally.
I think of Ja as very cool, like out of that same draft class, right?
Extremely cool. There's like a certain confidence and easiness to Ja that I think people gravitate towards. Zion's tough. Around 0 for me. What about you guys?
Well, I have a little nugget that I'm not sure what category to drop it in. I'll put it in this one. Zion Williamson got his first signature shoe under the Jordan brand with Nike well before Luka and well before Morant's got any signature deal with wherever he's at. I just think there is a perception of, magnitude with Zion that translates into these different meaningful milestones that he's hitting way before anybody else. And it's really not because of his basketball performance. It's really due to the cool factor of Zion and the imagery and what it stands for. And just the uniqueness of Zion is high too. So cool factor for me, I'm scoring Zion high. I'm going to put him at like a 7.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Chris. There, I'm reverse engineering this from the standpoint of like, hey, Zion was like the it guy in the hobby, and he hadn't really done much in the NBA. So if you reverse engineer that a little bit, why? Because he's cool. People are like, oh, his name is Zion. He's selling jerseys left and right. He's got a unique game. Like I put him at a 6 personally because I think he's got the it factor for a certain generation of collectors and fans.
The name matters. That's a great point.
The name does matter.
Zion's a phenomenally cool name.
Yeah. Like if his name was Charles Williamson.
Was that a shot at Charles Barkley, who's often compared to Zion Williamson with the Charles?
No, it actually
Williamson?
wasn't. And I don't even know why that's the name I thought of, but I don't know.
Okay.
It's kind of like what I said earlier with the Derek Jeter thing. Like if he played in Tampa, nobody knows who he is. Like there's the name Zion just kind of does ring with you, and that's a good point. But I have him and Ja kind of forever linked because they're in the same draft class 1-2. And I lean more towards where Jack is, where if I'm thinking of Ja's really cool and, a guy I'm seeing all over my Instagram feed just when he's dancing on the sideline for whatever reason, and then I compare that with Zion, Zion's more highlight driven. I'm probably somewhere more in the middle between where you guys all are, like in like the 4 range.
We can debate Zion's coolness all day, I suppose. We need a number. Come on. You're
6.
a host.
6.
6.
I like that. Jack was definitive about it. I like that.
I like it.
Okay. 6.
All right. So that's the rundown. We got 11 categories. You want to give the recap on it?
Yeah. So winning 0, market 0, cool factor 6, highlights 6, fan loyalty 0, celebrity 3, reputation -2, career arc 8, cards 7, injury risk -7, position 5.
For overall weighted score, including the weights that we discussed earlier, of 4.0. Just for context, we had Kobe at a 14.89. So he's well below Kobe. But who's he in the ballpark of anyone we've done? I think he's lower than anyone we've done so far. We have Ja as a 9.
I think the unknown factors in quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think if you look back at the way we kind of scored this, the unknown factors in with a lot of it. Like, there's more. I'll say this: there's probably there's way more room for him to ascend than there probably is for Ja right now.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in this. We'll revisit the score and say June when they're closer to the playoffs, maybe even after the playoffs, to see how much it's changed.
And if you've got anyone else that you want us to kind of put into this, we want to bring the core score. We want to keep bringing this forward here on the show because this is a fun topic, and I think it really is informative and something that's really thought provoking for collectors. I know it is for me. I'm not a big basketball collector, but the way you guys have kind of brought this up with guys like Zion and Ja, super helpful. So if there's anybody else that you kind of want to see subjected to a rundown for the core score, at PSA Card on Twitter, drop us a line. We want to keep this going, but I guess last impression, was that higher or lower than you expected when making a prediction for where Zion would fall in the core score?
It's lower than I thought. I knew he would be lower than Kobe, obviously. I knew he would be lower than Ja, but that low, pretty interesting. It makes me think like we need to tweak a few things. The core score isn't perfect. The algorithm is advancing, but it is interesting, and I'm excited to see this shift over time too, because I think there's a lot of room for Zion to grow in a handful of these categories.
There's so much up in the air. There's so much volatility built into these scores, especially for the younger players. But you know what I like about this score? I actually like that he ended up a little bit less than half a Ja, because even though we didn't really look too intensely at on-court performance, we really looked at a much more holistic range of factors. At the end of the day, the 9 for Ja, the 4 for Zion, it really kind of mirrors what they've accomplished so far while keeping an eye towards what they're both capable of. So I think it's a fitting outcome.
We're going to be back next week. We might dive into the core score again. I don't know. This was a pretty fun exercise. Like Jack said, we're going to tweak some things. But once again, leave us a review. We want to hear from you. We want your feedback. If you got questions for us, we are here to talk the hobby with you at all times. At PSA Card on Twitter is where to reach us. For Jack Archer, Steve Sloan, Chris McGill, I'm Ryan Green. We will be back next week once again here on the PSA Pod.